That night, Teo sat down with his mother. "Mama," he said hesitantly, "I think I saw someone today at the event, someone that looked like Dad." Mary's heart skipped a beat. She immediately dismissed the idea. "Teo, your father is gone," she said firmly, trying to convince herself as much as her son. The bustling streets of Lagos were always filled with noise, but on that fateful day, the sound that broke Mary's heart was not from the busy traffic or the vendors shouting on the street. It was the wailing of her children as they were told their father, Femi, had died in a car accident. Mary was stunned. Femi had left for work that morning, as usual, full of life and jokes. Now, all that remained were the broken pieces of their lives. The reality hit her hard. She was now a widow with 3 young children to care for. The funeral was a blur, with friends and family offering condolences and promises of support. But Mary knew deep down that life would never be the same again. Lagos, the city that had once promised so much, now seemed like a hostile battleground, and she had no idea how to navigate it alone. The days after the funeral were filled with uncertainty. Femi had left no savings, and the little money they had was quickly depleting. The relatives who had promised to help soon disappeared, leaving Mary to fend for herself. She picked up odd jobs, cleaning houses, washing clothes, and anything else she could find, but it was barely enough to feed her children. Her oldest child, Teo, was just 14, and already he was forced to grow up quickly. He began doing small jobs after school, helping his mother in any way he could. Mary often stayed awake at night, wondering how she would make it through the next day. The vibrant city of Lagos, once full of promise, now felt like a trap, with no way out. But unknown to Mary, Femi's death was a carefully orchestrated lie. Femi had become frustrated with the struggles of raising a family in poverty. He had met Sandra, a wealthy businesswoman who offered him a life of luxury and ease. Unable to resist, Femi devised a plan to fake his death and escape his responsibilities. He staged the car accident with the help of some unscrupulous contacts and disappeared, leaving Mary and his children to mourn a man who wasn't even dead. Femi, now using the name Kola, began his new life in Abuja, far from the streets of Lagos and the family he left behind. Sandra, who had fallen for Femi's charms, introduced him to a world he had only dreamt of: lavish parties, powerful business connections, and a lifestyle that felt like a far cry from his previous struggles. Through Sandra's wealth and influence, Femi invested in real estate, quickly becoming a millionaire. His rise to success was rapid, and before long, he had everything he had ever wanted, except peace of mind. Every so often, Femi thought of Mary and the children he had abandoned, but he buried those feelings under the allure of his new life. Abuja became his playground, and with Sandra by his side, Femi was determined never to look back. But fate had other plans. Back in Lagos, life for Mary became a constant uphill battle. Every day was a new challenge, keeping her children fed, sending them to school, and paying rent was becoming nearly impossible. The menial jobs she worked were exhausting, but she kept at them, knowing that she had no other choice. Teo, now a young teenager, took on more responsibilities. He began working after school, doing small jobs to help his mother. His younger siblings, Sade and Kunal, also pitched in where they could, but it was clear that the weight of their father's absence was felt deeply. Despite the difficulties, Mary refused to give up. As the months passed, Mary found herself growing more resilient, but the constant struggle took its toll. The city was unrelenting, and there were nights when Mary cried herself to sleep, wondering how long she could endure this life. One afternoon, while Mary was out running errands, she bumped into Funmi, an old friend from secondary school. Funmi had heard about Femi's death and expressed her condolences, but she was surprised to see how much Mary had changed. After hearing about Mary's hardships, Funmi suggested she start her own small business, selling akara and moi moi, traditional Nigerian street food. At first, Mary was hesitant. She had no capital and no experience running a business. But Funmi insisted, offering to help her with the startup costs. Desperate for a way out of her financial troubles, Mary agreed. With Funmi's help, Mary set up a small food stall near a busy junction in Lagos. Slowly but surely, customers began to trickle in. The aroma of her freshly made akara and moi moi attracted people, and soon, word began to spread. Mary's business grew, giving her a much-needed sense of hope. Femi had long since forgotten the streets of Lagos, but business opportunities required him to return to the city. Now a successful businessman under his new identity, Kola, he and Sandra flew into Lagos for a high-profile meeting with potential investors. One evening, after a business conference, Femi and Sandra attended a lavish party at one of the city's luxury hotels. As they mingled with Lagos elite, Femi's eyes wandered to the street vendors outside the hotel. In the distance, he saw a woman selling food by the roadside. Her face, though older and tired, was unmistakable as Mary. His heart pounded. For a moment, he considered approaching her, but the thought of her discovering the truth terrified him. Instead, he stayed inside, convincing himself that it was just a coincidence. Meanwhile, Mary's Akara and Moi Moi business flourished. She gained a loyal customer base, and soon she was catering small events around the city. Though the struggles of daily life remained, there was a sense of pride that came with building something from the ground up. Her children helped where they could, with Teo managing deliveries and her younger children assisting after school. Mary had grown stronger over the years, and though she still thought of Femi, her life was no longer defined by his absence. The business gave her purpose, and with each passing day, she became more confident in her ability to provide for her family. Fate, however, had a different plan. Femi's new business partner, Mr. Chaik, was planning a corporate event and needed a caterer. On the recommendation of a colleague, he hired Mary to provide the food. Excited about the opportunity, Mary and her children worked tirelessly to prepare for the event. On the day of the event, Teo was in charge of delivering the food. As he carried trays of steaming akara into the venue, he noticed a man standing at the far end of the room, laughing with a group of businessmen. Something about the man looked familiar, the way he stood, the sound of his voice. Teo couldn't shake the feeling, but with so many people in the room, he pushed the thought aside and focused on the job at hand. However, the feeling of familiarity gnawed at him. Teo couldn't get the image of the man out of his mind. That night, Teo sat down with his mother. "Mama," he said hesitantly, "I think I saw someone today at the event, someone that looked like Dad." Mary's heart skipped a beat. She immediately dismissed the idea. "Teo, your father is gone," she said firmly, trying to convince herself as much as her son. But Teo was insistent. "No, Mama. It wasn't just someone who looked like him. It was him." Mary refused to entertain the idea any further, but later that night, she found herself lying awake, troubled by Teo's words. Could it be true? Was it possible that Femi had somehow survived and had been living a double life? Teo's curiosity wouldn't let him rest. Over the next few weeks, he kept an eye out for the mysterious man. Eventually, he followed him one afternoon after another event and confirmed his worst fears. The man wasn't just someone who looked like his father. It was his father. He had changed his name, built a new life, and abandoned them for wealth and power. Shocked and filled with anger, Teo confronted his mother with the truth. "Mama, it's him. I'm sure of it. He's alive. He's rich now, living in luxury while we've been suffering all these years." Mary was speechless. The possibility that Femi had abandoned them for another life was too painful to accept. Yet, deep down, she knew Teo was telling the truth. Determined to face the man who had destroyed her family, Mary decided to confront Femi. With Teo's help, she found out where he was staying during his business trips to Lagos. One evening, Mary went to the luxurious hotel where Femi was attending another corporate event. As she entered the grand ballroom, she spotted him immediately, laughing and mingling with the city's wealthy elite. Her heart pounded as she approached him. "Femi," she called out. The name sent a ripple through the crowd. Femi froze, turning slowly to face her. There was no escaping now. Femi's face paled as he saw Mary standing in front of him. He had prepared for many possibilities in life, but he had never imagined this confrontation. The look in her eyes, hurt, anger, betrayal, was too much for him to bear. He tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. Mary, shaking with rage, unleashed years of pent-up anger. "You left us. You left us to suffer while you built this life for yourself. How could you?" Femi tried to explain, but nothing he said could erase the years of hardship Mary had endured. She stormed out before he could finish, leaving him standing there, consumed by guilt. In the days that followed, Femi was torn. He wanted to make amends, but how could he? The life he had built with Sandra was everything he had dreamed of. Yet, the family he had abandoned haunted him. Sandra began to notice the change in Femi. He was distant, distracted, and often lost in thought. When she confronted him, he brushed it off, but she knew something was wrong. Her suspicions grew as Femi became more withdrawn, and soon, cracks began to form in their seemingly perfect life. Meanwhile, Mary refused to accept any of Femi's attempts at reconciliation. He sent her money, gifts, anything he could think of to ease his guilt, but Mary rejected them all. She had survived without him for years, and she didn't need his wealth now. The story ends without a clear resolution. Femi is left grappling with the consequences of his decisions, torn between the life of luxury he has built with Sandra and the family he abandoned in Lagos. Mary, though strong and independent, is still wounded by the betrayal, unsure if she could ever forgive the man she once loved. Their children are caught in the middle, with Teo harboring deep resentment towards his father, while Sade and Kunal are torn between anger and longing for their father's presence. The tension lingers unresolved as Femi's double life slowly unravels. Will he choose to return?